All right, Coast to Coast Combat Hour. The eve before Christmas Eve, just before the holidays. Had a busy weekend, middle of the night stuff happening. As always, Ed Carbajal here with Matthew Hawkins. This is the Coast to Coast Combat Hour. What's up, Matt? I see you're wearing an interesting sweater for the end of the show for what we
Oh,
got coming.
it's Christmas, but more importantly, it's Fedor Fight Week. So yeah, the sweater of absolute glorious victory is out this week, and we'll get into that a little later
Yeah.
on.
You
But
know what's funny? I was teasing Matt before we started recording because I didn't realize he was wearing a sweater. Him being in the nice California weather, everyone out here is rocking some sort of ugly sweater. But so he had to point it out to me. That's why we were laughing before we started recording. But yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. But obviously, we had a lot to go over the weekend. You caught a lot of the Hawaii stuff in Bellator. I mean, a little bit of last minute craziness going on there. So, um, I mean, you saw the event as it aired. It was literally like just before it happened, right?
yeah, you're referring to the main event getting canceled last minute. Josh Barnett, Ronnie Marks or Honey Marks. Yeah, I caught it on Twitter. I think from Josh Gross. I saw one of his tweets
Mm-hmm.
where he had talked to Scott Coker, and it was probably a fight before the main event. Um, I think it was before the Eric Perez fight because the Toby Misech Perez fight turned out to be the main event. So it was sometime right after the Alejandra Lara fight, and they announced I saw that on Twitter, and then they announced it in the arena shortly thereafter. But yeah, Barnett came down with the flu bug, I guess, and doctors wouldn't clear him. It is kind of interesting because when I saw the pre-taped video of Barnett walking into the arena
Yeah.
during the intro to the show, it didn't look right to me. I actually kind of commented to myself that he just didn't look super healthy. He didn't,
Yeah.
it looked like he had something wrong with him. So
I
uh,
wonder because it's weird because he did that whole thing during open workouts, that whole pro wrestling shoot with his pad holder or training partner there. I hope it wasn't something that like something infectious that he got from ramming himself into a Monster Energy drink machine or something.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. Who knows what the exact situation is? Obviously, there's some conspiracy theorists out there that like to, yeah, with Josh Barnett's history, it opens it up to some questions on why he necessarily would have been pulled last minute. But it happens in MMA. I got into it with a guy on Twitter who anytime anything happens in Bellator, people love to jump on it and get on the
Oh yeah,
Bellator sucks bandwagon
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and act like this doesn't happen in MMA across the board, across the globe, in every promotion throughout the history of the sport. And you know, it's with the sport growth of the sport, you get fans who honestly don't know the history of the sport. They're not really MMA fans; they're UFC fans. So they look for a chance to jump on
yeah.
and criticize. So, I had to shut down a dude who was trying to say they sucked and this doesn't happen in UFC. And then I kindly pointed out to him Mitrione Struve from UFC 175.
Amanda
That was
Nunes when
Amanda Nunes Shevchenko.
yeah,
I mean, I was at both of those, and then we throw in, and those weren't good enough for him. So I gave him, well, I know you weren't watching the sport, but at UFC 24, Kevin Randleman versus Pedro Hizzo, the heavyweight main event uh, championship of the world, was canceled as Pedro or as Kevin Randleman KO'd himself preparing for the walkout. So it happens, and again, that still wasn't good enough. And then I reminded him that the UFC canceled a fight because of a cold sore. Um, in your neck of the woods out there.
mhm.
Yeah, I mean, it just happens. So I just think
Yeah.
it's
What a Whitaker's freaking hernia day of the event. The first time they were in Australia with him, and when they bumped Adesanya and gassed him up.
yeah. I mean,
So
it's nonstop.
yeah,
It's
yeah. Every promotion has their problems. You can't single out. You can't try to badmouth one promotion.
yeah. I mean, Pride had a dude start lit on fire during the walkout and stuff. So I mean, it literally never ends. I was at an event where a riot broke out and the event got canceled. I mean, things just it never ends in the
Yeah.
sport. So, um, but that's beside the point. I just think it's funny when I see fans that claim to be MMA fans so quick to jump on a promotion um, that they don't watch and they're not knowledgeable about. So that was interesting. But the highlights of that night, there was a couple. Joey Davis uh, fought Chris Cisneros. Looked dominant. Came out, got a real quick takedown. Big elbows, big punches, cut him up, and ended up getting a first round TKO win. First time for the main card for Joey Davis. He moved to 7-0. Big time prospect for Bellator. But for me, the highlight of the night, and not just because I'm a fan of hers, but Alejandra Lara's performance
Yeah.
against Vida Arteaga was
I actually had Artiga picked to win that, so I was yeah.
I thought it was going to be a tough fight for Lara after seeing her last couple fights. I thought Vita would press the issue and be in her face and make it tough for her. But it was really the total opposite. I mean, Lara put on one of the better performances I've seen in women's MMA. I mean, I'm not going to jump the gun here and say it was one of the greatest, but it was up there. It was a tremendous performance in MMA general. She stuffed takedowns, her elbows, knees, punches, kicks. I mean, it was one of the better performances, like I said, I've seen. I think if she fights like that, I think she's becomes heavy championship material. I know she lost her previous title attempt at Bellator 201 to Alimale McFarlane in a very good grappling match. But if she fights like she did this past Friday night, I think Alimale would have tremendous trouble with her on the feet. And she seems to have at least against Vita, she was able to avoid being taken to the ground. So interesting. So those were really the highlights. Toby Misech in the main event, the Hawaiian
I was just
kid.
about to say, yeah.
Yeah, he got a devastating knockout of Eric Perez. I don't know what the odds makers had it. I assumed Perez, who just signed from Combate,
Yeah,
was
I was all
probably.
on. I was all aboard that, and of course, my I'm not closing 2019 out with my picks very good. Just put it that way.
Yeah, so Perez went down hard, got KO'd brutally 54 seconds into the first round. Um,
Although
we,
UFC 245, I was 100% on the main card, so I can be accurate. I can be happy about that.
You can be happy about that
Yeah.
one. But so that event ended Friday night. Obviously, the fans that were the troops in the crowd, I'm sure that they were disappointed that the main event got canceled. But
Mhm.
to have a Hawaiian hometown kid get such a devastating, exciting knockout in the main event, kind of saved the night, I would say. So wasn't the best night for Bellator, but by far wasn't the worst. But it kind of led on to the. Seems like they always have when they do the double headers. There's always something that they
At least
get
in this
able to
year,
find.
yeah,
So
yeah.
so that was that, and then shortly after that event ended, UFC Korea Zombie versus Edgar kicked off. Um, I kind of watched a couple of the early prelims before calling it, and then woke up in the morning and caught I caught the last three fights of the main card. Charles Jourdain picked up a huge upset win over the Korean Superboy Duho Choi. Uh, Second round KO, big huge punch,
Mm.
good fight, got fight of the night. But it wasn't good for Choi. Tough loss in front of his home country, and kind of an off fight for him as he's in the middle of all his military stuff in Korea. So we may not see him again for still a couple more years. I thought he was done with his military. Turns out he's just waiting for more orders, and that can take a while. And while he's doing that, he's not allowed to leave the country. So. So yeah, he could definitely be gone a while. Co-main event: Volkan Ozdemir, Alexander Rakic. I don't know if you caught any of these, Ed, but
No, I didn't
Vol-
catch. I only saw the highlights of poor Frankie Edgar's result.
so the co-main event, light heavyweight, a couple of the top contenders at that weight class ended up going to a split decision. Went Volkan's way. Um, Real close fight. really exciting fight. A lot of big punches, a lot of back and forth. A lot of people thought Rakic won. Volkan kind of got robbed. I felt in this fight with Reyes, so doesn't it's just part of the game. When it goes to the decision, especially in a close fight, you get a lot of splits, and sometimes the right guy wins, sometimes the wrong guy wins, but it generally evens out over time. Um, then that brings us to the main event, which you were speaking of, Korean Zombie versus Frankie Edgar. I think we saw a passing of the torch.
A
I
lot
mean,
of that, a lot of
you
that
know,
this year.
yeah. Korean Zombie first round KO of Frankie Edgar after pretty much brutalizing him from the opening bell. Frankie Edgar showed the heart that made him champion and
Hmm.
made him a fan favorite across the globe, but just wasn't there.
I mean,
Just
it,
couldn't take the beating.
I mean, he's probably taken. I always say this when we talk about other fighters, how they just, you know, after a while that durability starts to fade and stuff, and sometimes they got to start listening to their bodies or whatever. But I mean, I think Frankie Edgar's still a game fighter. Everyone's as soon as somebody loses, no matter how old they are, they're quick to call them washed up or whatever. But that was last minute, and to travel and do all that. I mean, not last minute, but he was not the original opponent. It was supposed to be or Brian Ortega, wasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So so when that fell out, I mean, I'm sure he got ready just to get it back in there, in his own. Kind of reminds me of our boy Syed Awad. That you get a chance to try to get back a W and get back on a winning streak. Sometimes a break is good, man. I mean, maybe he just needs to take some time off and then see where he's at. I mean, I thought it was weird how Conor McGregor kind of like congratulated him or whatever it was, or defended him when folks were bashing him about losing because he Frankie Edgar put something up like thanks to folks that were sticking by me and blah blah blah, and then this whole thing with fans kicking a guy when he's down, and McGregor came to his defense and was like, you're still game or whatever, which is weird because that was one of the guys that he thought that, I mean, I saw it as a compliment where he thought coming back and fighting someone like Frankie Edgar would be a good fight to prepare for Khabib, because Khabib is such a beast right now. So I mean, if that's what Frankie Edgar is, you can't. I know it didn't look good. It wasn't a good way to lose. It's not like he lost by decision. He got the TKO'd, but I mean, it is what it is, man. I mean, these guys know when it's time to quit, and I mean, I'm pretty sure Frankie Edgar would run your average. I mean, it was not that long ago he ran over Yair Rodriguez. So
Yeah, exactly. I just, it catches up to you. MMA is a
yeah,
brutal ending to career for fighters and
young
competitors.
man's game. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, it's a young man's game, and it's definitely a brutal sport. Like I said, when it comes to an end, it usually tends to not end well for the aging fighter. So that took us through the night on Friday night. Saturday morning, I woke up. Caught the kickboxing event of the year, at least scheduled to be Rico Verhoeven, Badahari at Glory. This was a rematch from their first fight. Uh, um, uh, Verhoeven, the champion of Glory, Badahari, the longtime boxing legend, fought everybody in the K1 ranks coming up. This was a rematch. The first fight, Hari suffered a shoulder injury. This fight, Hari came out, dropped Verhoeven in the first round, which was the first time Verhoeven had ever been dropped in his Glory career. Second round was a back and forth violent battle. Most thought Verhoeven came on top, at least the judges. It's open scoring, so we saw that. Then in the third round, Verhoeven got dropped again, and Hari was going in for the kill, threw a wheel kick, and it appears to have broken his foot on Verhoeven. He fell to the ground, was not able to get up. They actually had to attend to him as he was in a lot of pain and cursing up a storm in the cage. Tough loss for Hari. Second time that's happened due to injury to Rico. We don't talk a lot about kickboxing, but this is a fight that is big. So we'll see what happens. Best of
yeah.
luck to Hari recovering.
Anything with
Uh,
Rico is pretty big. I mean, I actually am a fan of his, and I know he would want to venture into MMA. But obviously, well, why leave something you're doing so well in?
Yeah, I mean, he was on his way to losing this fight,
Yeah.
and a lot of people. Badahari has a history outside the cage, so a lot of people tend to root against him because of that. But actually, not cage ring, but inside the ring, he's one of the most brutal, violent fighters that really this planet's ever seen. So when he gets in the rare times he actually fights, it's quite a show. So hopefully Glory's able to work something out. Once he recovers, we get a third fight, and we actually get to see one through, and they can work it out. Like you said, Verhoeven's talked about doing MMA. Perhaps now's the time. He really doesn't have a lot of challengers in Glory. He's pretty much cleaned out everybody. Um, I'm sure there's a couple guys out there that keep working their way up, but if he's going to do MMA, now might be the time. Buy some time, and then maybe wait for Hari to recover, and then have that huge payday in another year or so. So that was Glory. That was Saturday morning, and then that warmed us up for the Bellator main weekend event. Bellator 236. Ilima-Lei
It's
McFarland
night
defend.
number 2 in Hawaii.
Yep, defending her belt against Kate Jackson. Did you catch this? Did you catch this entire card, Ed, or what was your status for Saturday night?
No, that was I was at a Christmas party on Saturday night, but that was on DAZN, so I won't be subscribing to the DAZN until I make more money or something. I don't know what to do anymore. I mean, between the triple play with ESPN and all that, I got to figure something out. But DAZN is definitely looks like it's worth my while for 2020.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I didn't like their price or their change in the pricing scheme. I know if you
Mm.
prepay for the year, it's a good deal, but and a lot of people swear by it. But I did manage to catch the event, um, and really the last two fights were the fights that had the most meaning. That was AJ McKee Jr. versus Derek Campos, the first quarterfinal bout of the featherweight Grand Prix tournament. AJ McKee, God, came out through a flying knee, tried to beat his 8
Yeah,
second KO.
I saw the
Um,
like I said, I saw the highlights. I didn't watch the event, but I did see that.
yeah, he came out like a maniac, dominated the first round. Second round came out same way, did his thing, and then Campos managed to reverse it, started to shift the momentum. Seemed like AJ McKee was getting a little bit tired. Like I said, he came out extremely aggressive early. Then in the third round, McKee was doing his thing. Campos went for a reversal, and in the process of trying to reverse him on the ground and get on top, he ended up in a quick triangle armbar. Tremendous move by AJ McKee.
I,
Lots of skill. I mean, it kind of looked from the outside eye, it definitely looked like it was a bit lucky as far as not so much that he put him in the triangle, but that the momentum was really shifting, and Campos just really got caught in a tough situation when he seemed to be taking control of the fight a little bit.
yeah, I saw that. I saw that finish. And I mean, he tapped quick. It looked painful. But so the winner, so he gets the winner of it's Borix and Caldwell, right?
Yes, and that is January 25th at the Forum in Los Angeles.
So I mean, either one of those is going to make for an exciting fight. I mean, but McKee's is just on a tear. I mean, ever since he knocked out Dominic Mazzata out here in Mohegan Sun, I've just been a fan of him, and then Borix kind of came. I don't want to say under the radar, but after he got that win over out here in New York over what's his name, Aaron Pico. Out here in New York, I was just kind of like, I mean, the, Bellator doesn't get enough. I mean, obviously, you and I pay attention. Maybe the hardcores pay attention, but I feel like they're up and coming guys like McKee and Borix and all. They don't get the attention that they're earning with all the wins that they're getting. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, Barks is a weird situation. I think he's gotten some mainstream pub. ESPN's written about him.
Hmm.
Borix is he's going to need to win this tournament, or at least probably get to the finals to really establish himself to the mainstream MMA world. obviously fans like us, even if he loses to Caldwell or McKee in the semis, will know that he's a young kid who at that point will be 14 or 15-0 when that loss comes. So it's going to be interesting. McKee is I think he's clearly the favorite on that side of the bracket. I think he's probably the favorite for the tournament to at least face the champ Pitbull, which would obviously be an incredible match. He just got. I think he has to slow down a little bit here. I think his win over Kanaharian, he got that 8-second KO, and he came out this fight like he wanted to beat that time. And I think the Kanaharian win, while obviously incredible for his career, may may not have been the best thing mentally for him. I think he needs to realize that he's going to be fighting killers the rest of his career from this point on. I mean, he's not going to be fighting any more up and comers and cans and stuff. He's going to be fighting the best that Bellator has to offer, and some of the best in the world. So
Yeah.
I think he needs to take a step back a little bit and respect his opponents more, and realize he's not going to get a 6-second KO every fight, 8-second KO. Caldwell fight is interesting if that's the match, because Caldwell can obviously stretch the bout out. And when if we get into a case where you get a fourth, fifth round, with the output McKee puts out there, it'll be interesting to see what his stamina is like that late into a bout. But that's still such a long way out, and that fight actually won't take place for God knows how long at this point, because McKee's was the first bout. This stretches out through, I believe, March, and then we get set with the other bouts. So realistically,
plus new stuff is starting. They announced that at that weekend. I mean, Coker said he's working on a women's tournament. He hinted at it when he was out here, and obviously they have Cyborg there in January. So who knows? I know it's not going to be her division that they're doing a tournament. Excuse me, a tournament for, but it's one of the lighter ones. I think it's flyweight. I'm not sure. But
it seems to me like flyweight would make sense right now. Ali Malay's done a good job of kind of clearing everybody out. I mean, you got Juliana Velasquez, who picked up a big win over Brunella this weekend, goes to 10-0, and she's probably the next number one contender in line. So maybe that's a fight you do. But if you wanted to set up a number one contender bout or put Ali Malay in a Grand Prix, and just continue the trend of what we've seen with the featherweights and the welterweights, that would be something to do. And they definitely have shaped up a roster now with Liz Carmouche coming in. That adds another name. They announced that signing on Friday night. So that adds some interest in there. Yeah, I'm glad to see that she didn't have to wait too long.
No, especially her being a former Marine. They were doing the USO thing on Friday. She was doing promotional stuff in DC when she got her walking papers for the UFC. So I mean, it looks like her connection with the military is always going to help her out. That's actually really nice to see.
Yeah. So that brings us to the main event. Ilima-Lei Macfarlane picked up a unanimous decision 5-round victory over Kate Jackson. Pretty much overwhelmed her from start to finish. Jackson obviously shows heart. She does in all of her fights. But Ilima-Lei was just way too much, mainly on the ground. A lot of stalemates while standing up against the cage. But Macfarlane, no question, won every round and continued her reign there, moving to 11-0. So there's a lot going on with Bellator, a lot of exciting stuff. So we'll see what happens. The schedule's a little bit. I mean, they have a lot going on. We're not completely aware of the schedule yet. At least I'm not. Maybe somebody like Nolan King and those guys that are a little bit more on the inside know that where the locations. And
I mean, obviously, like I think I mentioned this on a previous episode too. They always do kind of mirror their what they've done the previous year. So like we know when to expect them out here in the Northeast where Nolan and I are. Funny we're talking about him because he was gonna be on this episode tonight, but he's with MMA Junkie and they got him on the hook, so he's recording something with them, which they're doing actually a really good like decade fighter of the decade, like of the decade type of things that I don't think any other websites are doing. So definitely check out what Nolan's doing there. But Coker said at the post-fight press conference at the end of the second night and Saturday night that he wants to make Bellator Hawaii part of their regular schedule. So I think they've been there the last 2 Decembers, right? I like the last
Correct.
two. So that's
Correct.
probably going to be a thing for them, and which would make sense because if they're going to be doing stuff with Japan, then you know it makes sense logistically to make that jump to Japan in a couple of weeks, like they're doing, which is I guess is a perfect segue to why you're wearing that sweater.
Yeah, I mean the end of the year is always a special thing when we get some Japanese MMA, and when, in my opinion, the greatest of all time, Fedor Emelianenko, is involved, then it adds it adds a little extra gift to the end of the year. So that brings us to Saturday night. We're gonna get it live on Paramount at 10 o'clock Eastern. I was thinking it was Sunday night. Found out today it was Saturday night, which is incredibly good. Um, which means it makes it easier to stay up.
Yeah, it's great. I mean,
Especially for you with the event starting. For me, it starts at 7, so I really had no worries either way. But you're going to get a 5-6 fight card. If it's just the Bellator, I'm not sure. There's a little confusion because half the card's basically a Ryzen card in the Bellator
mhm.
cage that are like post limbs, so they're not sure about the broadcast of those right now. But
Those
yeah,
are gonna, they sent out a press release. I mean, obviously the folks on Sky Perfect TV and Goa or whatever they have out there.
uh-huh.
That's where folks, if you have Sky Perfect TV and all that, that's where you can watch the post limbs. But we're gonna obviously the fights that are the most high profile are the ones that are going to be on, or for us anyway, for this fan base here in the United States. That's how we're going to get our Bellator card with the Bellator Japan event, the main card. A lot of
Yeah,
postings though. I'm looking for the card now.
yeah, I mean, you got big names. It kicks off MVP Michael Venom Page fights Shinsho Anzai. Um, Anzai's
There you go.
11-3. I know a lot of people think this is the typical MVP fight, but he's fighting a legit opponent, so I think it'll be a little bit of a test for Page. Um, Goiti Yamauchi faces Darren Cruikshank. Cruikshank's been fighting for Ryzen for the last couple years, former UFC fighter. Yamauchi coming off of his quick submission win over Syed Awad. Um, Good, exciting fight there. I mean, that potentially could be fight of the night material. Lorenz Larkin fights Nakamura. Another good fight. Uh, and then, like I said, Michael Chandler was the co-main event.
Yeah,
He was scheduled to fight Benson Henderson. Sydney Outlaw steps in,
yeah,
coming off a win over Roger Huerta. Outlaw, good wrestler, 14-3 against the Mr. Kind of Mr. Bellator, Michael Chandler. So that's tremendous. Chandler fights are never boring, and then the main event that is two legends of the sport, Fedor Emelianenko and Quentin Rampage Jackson. Uh, Going to be an interesting, exciting night from
yeah.
Japan.
And it's definitely pretty cool that it's them two in Japan on this card after considering where their careers, they both built their careers in Pride and they both had a strong fan base in Japan. And Rampage has never been shy about loving being in Japan and fighting in Japan and stuff like that. And so I think there's just something. I mean, it's pretty cool, especially if like Fedor has been pretty public about this last run of fights being his final fight. So it's pretty cool that this is going to be one of them. They're definitely way different fighters than they were back when they were fighting in Pride. Rampage hasn't slammed a guy in quite some time, and Fedor. Fedor's probably been the Fedor that you know and love. He's obviously got he's been picking up losses, not the way that we were used to back then. But again, we were talking about it with Frankie Edgar. That it's the what's the line from Creed? The time is undefeated when it comes to combat sports, and that's definitely holds true with both these guys. So, just really quick about the post limbs. Again, Sky Perfect TV and GYAO in Japan. Gyao, I guess that's how you say that.
Yeah.
But there's some fighters on this card that fans out that aren't fans of Japanese MMA might not want to pay attention to. Like Andy Nguyen is fighting on that card. Her opponent is Ai Shimizu, 5-1. Andy Nguyen the Crazian, um, and there's Kid Yamamoto's protege Yusuke Yachi is in a post limp bout. I think it's either the first or last. I'm not sure how this one's gonna go. But there's there's a kickboxing bout on there. Ryzen, they like to mix it up, so it's pretty cool that they're again that they're doing this co-promotion. I wonder if 2020 will bring more co-promotion, like maybe do something with who else is out there that's looking to get under someone's radar? Like maybe another regional promotion. Um, Obviously, if it's under the UFC banner, they're probably going to get pushed back on that. But somebody that like one of the promotions on Flow or promote with Bama when they go to Europe and stuff. I don't know. I think 2020 they need to start making more things happen. I mean, or at least maybe more Rise and Bellator events happen.
Yeah, I think you're going to see some back and forth. I think the Horiguchi situation with his injuries probably derails that a little bit.
I
Uh,
know,
which is a shame because you were going to have some stuff there.
but
Uh,
it could have been the situation that makes it happen too. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like
no,
it,
it sets up the future for that.
yeah.
The light heavyweights, Bellator and Ryzen both are not super deep at light heavyweights, so there could be some crossover I could see happening there in that weight class. Um, just a quick thing and about Fedor, you know people talk about him picking up losses, and this is not coming off of what you just said necessarily, but the fact of the matter is he's 2-2 in his last four, and he's 7-2 in his last nine. I mean, this is he might lose this fight, he might lose five more fights in a row, but he gets put on a level that's not many other fighters we see. I mean, what's Frankie Edgar, 1-5 in his last six or something? I mean, I don't know if it's that extreme, but he's like 1-3 or 1-4. It's people, but if you ask the general quote unquote MMA fan on Twitter, they would make it sound like Fedor's lost like seven fights in a row, um, which I think is kind of funny. So um, I don't know who I'm necessarily picking in this fight. I'm obviously cheering for Fedor. It's a tough fight for him with the status of him not being able to take a punch like he used to. Uh,
Yeah, and I think
I
that, yeah.
if he we always say this lately about Fedor because he's come out just kind of winging in a lot of his fights. But if he fights smart, he beats Quentin Jackson 9 times out of 10. Um, Now that also depends on what Quentin Jackson looks like. I haven't seen photos of him. I'm not sure what kind of shape he's in. But for instance, if the Rampage that fought Chael Sonnen shows up, Fedor should you know uh, destroy him. He should either knock him out standing or take him down and ground pound him or submit him within a round.
I
Um,
I would say if Fedor, like you said, I don't think it would bode well for Fedor to go toe to toe and try to trade hands with Rampage. I mean, regardless of the shape he's in, the man hits hard. Even Chael fought him both, and he actually said after the fight with Rampage that harder Rampage hit him the hardest he had ever been hit, um, in a body shot too, nonetheless. So it's kind of like if the power's still there for both of them, um, maybe Fedor take a page out of Chael's book and try to wrestle him, control him for the whole fight.
yeah, I mean, that's the smart move, but we haven't seen that in a long time, and admittedly, I think that's been one of Fedor's biggest issues. I mean, in hindsight, after seeing Matt Mitrione's
Hmm.
ground skills, him going in there and slugging that out, a minute into that fight was probably not the smartest move. If he takes Mitrione down, likely we see a submission or ground and pound victory. Um, and then the Bader fight again, kind of like the all these other fights that end so quickly. You just if it ends in one punch, it's hard to really get a true reading on it. I think Ryan Bader obviously is in a different place right now in his career than Fedor. So that was where that fight. I think the right fighter at least won that fight as far as um, who should win that fight at this point is what I'm trying to say. So I don't know. Interesting. I just hope that it's when Fedor and Rampage and these guys fight, I always say it. I just hope nobody suffers severe injury, and I hope that it's just an exciting fight. I hope the fans get their money's worth, and um, I think this fight ends with somebody going down hard. I don't see really any other way around it from what we've seen, and that could be either guy. I don't know where Rampage is. Again, I say physically, mentally, he's always kind of up in the air on where he's at. I know he's a huge Fedor fan, and this is not a fight he necessarily wanted. So you just got to kind of wonder if, obviously, when the cage door shuts, the mentality of these guys change. But um, does he have the killer instinct? I mean, the one thing we know about Fedor is he has the killer instinct. Um, it's dire, kill or be killed in all of his fights, and
Hmm.
um, whereas Rampage has had his off nights and his kind of sluggish performances here and there. So I don't know. Interesting though, but super excited to find out that was Saturday night. So I will be cracking a beer and
Yeah,
enjoying that event
I mean,
as we prepare for the New Year's, and you'll be
I'll be at the Pro Fight League 2019 championships. Kayla Harrison. I mean, there's no people like to again. We're talking about bashing promotion. People bash the PFL and try to say they talk about undercard and main card, but if you pay attention to what they're trying to do over there with their league format, it really doesn't matter where you're placed because this is at the end. At the end, this is what matters. It's 6 title fights, and what's his name's going to be on that card? Brandon Lawfane is the first fight that's just not a championship fight. It's on ESPN2, so folks should be able to see it. He's fighting David Alex Valle in the first fight on that card for New Year's Eve here in New York, and then you get the 6 title fights. I'll be there covering the event live for mymmanews.com. There's going to be a press conference Friday. I don't know if I'm making that yet, just because of the scheduling. I was just complaining to Matt that they kind of got the schedule broken up a little oddly for something that's happening on New Year's Eve in the middle of New York. But we'll see. Maybe they'll change that. I mean, the holidays coming in the middle of the week, screwing us up big time, which is why we're recording on a Monday. But
yeah. So I mean, but that's a nice treat on New Year's Eve.
yeah,
We got a little caught up there in the Bellator, but obviously Ryzen has their event, which would be the night, New Year's Eve, but the night before. So it
yeah,
really is nonstop action. That one is the mix of the Bellator, Ryzen that we were talking about with the
yeah.
Grand Prix, um, including with Pitbull uh, against Luis Gustavo, Johnny Case versus Musayev in the other semifinal, Ayaka Hamasaki defending her belt against Sohee Ham, aka Hamberley. So there's a lot of action. I mean, we're not going to go down the Rena Kabuto.
She gets that rematch
She gets a
from
rematch with Lindsey Van Zant.
yeah.
Didn't go well in New York there, but we'll see what happens on her side of the globe. Siota Ishii, CB Dalloway. I mean, it's loaded night of action. So really Saturday night, and then I guess it'll be Monday night, and then Tuesday
And I think that's on
midday.
Fight TV, the Rising New Year's
Right?
Eve.
Yeah, correct. So it'll be Paramount on Saturday, and then Monday it will be on the Fight app, and then and then you said ESPN2 for PFL on
2019 championships. I can't
on.
believe they snagged Rory McDonald.
Yeah, that was some of the big news. Sounds like Bellator didn't make much of an offer to him. Curious to see what the contract is. I imagine PFL probably had to pay some good coin to get a name like that in.
Hmm. And
Um,
and their press release said multi-year, although I feel like that maybe they're gambling a little themselves because I mean McDonald's obviously been kind of hinting at retiring. So I mean I'm wondering, since they do a season format at the end of 2020, what is he going to stick around for another season if he doesn't win? I would imagine they're going to stack that division if he's going to be in their 170 division. I mean the uh, uh, Ray Cooper, I would imagine comes back because he's been a staple there. Ray Cooper the third. Jake Shields was in the first season. I don't know if he comes back for another season. It looks like he's still trying to figure out where he's gonna go from here outside of the UFC. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe they'll change that. I mean, the holidays coming in the middle of the week, screwing us up big time. But we'll see. submission grappling stuff. But yeah, man, interesting
Well, I
time.
mean, signing Rory McDonald definitely is tempting then for some of those guys like Shields
Hmm.
and some of those guys who are looking for some bigger fights. And I mean, Rory, any fight he is in is going to be a big fight. I would imagine his contract is something like a 5-fight contract or 3 years, something like that. So in theory, if he stays healthy all next year and were to get to the finals of the tournament, I would assume that would probably fulfill the majority of his contract. That would just be my guess. I mean, I would think at his point, if he's going to kind of bounce around from promotion to promotion, that would be the way to control leverage. If he wins their championship,
Hmm.
then he can become a free agent again, test the water. Um, I mean, you don't know where he is. If he goes sweeps through PFL, maybe he makes a return to the UFC for a couple fights. At this point in his career, I don't think he competes with the top 5 in the world, but he gives a lot of people a run for their money. So maybe he goes to Ryzen and gets another, just becomes a belt collector across organizations. So
Hmm.
I don't know, but man, it's been an exciting year, a lot of action. Kickoff next
What are you
year.
gonna do with that sweater if Fedor loses?
Well, same thing I did after he lost last fight. Put it on my shelf and wear it next time he fights. So,
But I mean,
no,
he's doing like a string of like. Obviously, we know it's like his last run. When when he does retire, like when he's done for good, what are you gonna do with that sweater?
probably burn it like Jedi Knight when they when they when they burnt the ashes of Anakin Skywalker or something like
Yeah.
that. But
All right, all right, all right. I'm done breaking your balls. You can close this out if you want.
no, the good thing is I bought 2 sweaters, so I have one just in case
In case he
one
comes
just
back out for a retirement again.
yeah, I got one still in the package. So, anyways, great year. It's been fun doing this podcast again as we're getting close to wrapping up our second year of
Yeah,
doing
man.
this, which time's flown. Special thanks to all the guests that have joined us. All the young fighters that we've interviewed that are going to have big things going on in 2020. Look forward to keeping up with them. I know that Mooka Barnes is booked for a fight on the 11th out here in Los Angeles, or at one of the Indian reservation casinos. So I believe he's the headliner. So
Nice.
if we don't get a chance to speak with him, obviously best of luck to him in that bout, and I'll keep the fans updated on how that goes. And I'm sure Mason and Wetzel and all these other guys will have big things happening. So we'll keep
Yeah, I
up
know
with
Jake
them.
Smith is working on getting something going for first quarter. He's been pretty active on Twitter. Shout out to Uber Smitty. If you're not following him on Twitter, give him a follow.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, obviously, and Taiwan Claxton picked up a win over the weekend, so we'll see him. Good things
yeah,
coming from him soon.
Claxton, Billy Q coming off his big win in UFC. He's got it. I'm sure
Yeah,
he'll have a big fight coming up. A lot of exciting stuff. Stephen Thompson. I'm sure he'll have another big contender fight. So, like I said, everybody's come on the show this year and contributed. Be rooting for you and look forward to talking to everybody again. Fans can follow us at Combat Hour on Twitter, Coast to Coast Combat Hour on Instagram, myself at MMA Hawk 21 on Twitter and Instagram. Follow Ed at Carbazol on Twitter and Carbeerzol on Instagram. Ed, have a Merry Christmas, safe travels over the new year, and go Fedor.
all right, you too, man. Go Fedor.